Have you ever felt like a digital stalker? I mean, you're sitting there staring at your content marketing digital dashboard, waiting for lead number 4,829 to trip some metaphorical wire. Download a white paper, click a link, anything, just so we can measure content marketing and pounce on them with a discovery call and get that big plus in our checkbox. Well, we've been treating our audiences a little bit like livestock in a processing plant for 20 years. I mean, we call it now the pipeline or the funnel, and we act like if we just squeeze that pipeline hard enough at the top, some customers will eventually pop out at the bottom. But what if I told you in content marketing that some of the most valuable people in our audience, the ones who might actually influence the marketing, might never buy a single thing from us? And what if I told you that by measuring clicks instead of trust only, well, you're essentially measuring the number of raindrops while ignoring the fact that the streets may be flooding outside. Today, we're going to padlock the doors on the attention factory for content marketing, and we're going to talk about the audience trust index and why content marketing might need a trellis, not a pipeline. So welcome to part 2 of my working something out in real time. I'm thinking about the measurement of trust in content marketing, something that we give a lot of lip service to, but haven't really put a lot of practicality around. You see, I'm not suggesting that anything is a replacement here for measuring direct marketing efforts, leads and sales and revenue and all of the things that we need to measure direct marketing, but rather a new addition to our portfolio of content marketing measurement that might finally help us put a specific measurement purpose to B2B content efforts at the top of that journey. So last week I talked about closing up the attention factory. And why? Well, because attention is now subject to hyperinflation. Trust is a financial asset that we may now actually have the ability with new technology and a new approach to get a bit of measurement. Maybe the temperature is the right way to think about all of this. So the question becomes, okay, well, how do you measure a relationship without, making it like weird? So last week I introduced this idea of the audience trust index. You can think of it like a clinical stethoscope for your brand. 3 dimensions that don't tell you how many people walk past your store, but rather tell you if their heart is actually beating for your brand. But here's the thing, if we want to take the next step, well, we can't actually use the traditional metaphor of pipeline or funnels or even infinity loops to create a structure. We need something a little different. We need a lattice work. So, okay, why a lattice work? Well, for decades, B2B content marketing, we've used what we've got, right? And drawing the distinction here, we've become obsessed with this idea of the buyer's journey, and we think of it as a straight line in content marketing. But let's be honest. Humans, when we create relationships with them, it's messy. When it comes to relationships with brands and or people, a relationship doesn't flow through a pipe. It doesn't flow neatly through a transactional, sort of infinity loop even. It grows across surfaces. You can think of it like a vine. It doesn't grow in a straight line toward your buy now button. It winds, it doubles back, it clings to whatever support it can find to move in the direction that you can try and orchestrate. Here's the scary part of that. 83% of our buyers, well, they're doing their researches in places where we can't necessarily track their transactions with content. In other words, our content marketing audiences, they're talking about us in Slack groups and Reddit threads and private dinners and events, and our tracking pixels can't see them handle and correlate those transactions to actual intent. So if our only metric is success, is did they fill out the form? Did they download the thing? Did they actually call us? Well, we're ignoring the 83% of the forest where the actual growth of trust in our particular product might be happening. So our job then isn't to process these people, it's to provide a strengthened lattice work, the support structure that makes sure that these relationships are trying to grow toward us instead of away from us. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying stop measuring leads, stop measuring transactions, stop measuring visits to your website, email subscriptions, all of that. I'm not crazy. That direct marketing measurement is important, and we've gotten pretty good at that with the tools that we have. But the lattice work here might be a layer above that transaction. I think maybe it can measure proximity to trust. And so in doing that, we can look at 2 axes. The first across the sort of lattice work here is what we might call the relational axis, right? Vertical. This is how deep our relationship goes. We've got 4 levels that we might look at here. 1, simple alignment, the sort of vibe check, if you will. Are we even talking about the same problems that our audience has? 2 might be empathy, the connection check. Do our audiences feel like we actually get them? Like, do we get their late night anxieties? Then the third level might be trust, that safety check, right? Are we consistent enough that they feel safe relying on us consistently over time for valuable information? Then 4th, the highest level might be advocacy, the partnership check, right? Are they defending us in those rooms that we can't see into? Then 2nd, we have the breadth axis, which is horizontal in this case. So that's looking at our influence or our temperature check across different stakeholders. Because of course in B2B, we don't just win over one person, one buyer. We have to win over the whole village, right? The buying committee or different personas, or we may even have different personas or ICPs that we're trying to reach. That's the breadth. We've got multiple personas and audiences to worry about. All right, so how do we score this? Well, we build cells in the lattice work. All right, so every time we can provide value, a new tendril of the vine of trust wraps around a square in our trellis. So each cell has 4 sides. And this is where I bring in the dimensions of the audience trust index that I talked about last week. So slide 1, that dimension 1 from last week, shared sentiment. Does this person feel like we've walked in their shoes? And we might give it a 0 out of 10 score. Side 2, the reciprocal utility. Did we actually help them do their job or solve a fear? 0 out of 10 again, maybe. Slide 3, predictable governance. Is our content consistent? Or are we thought leaders on LinkedIn but spammy salespeople in their inbox? Again, 0 out of 10. Side 4, and this is the new one that's from last week, is the proximity signal. Kind of a wrap-up of the other 3. I call this the loud cue signal. Is the reply, the save, the share, the transaction we actually can see that sort of proves the resonance that we're talking about here. So let's look at a quick example of this. Say you're targeting a CFO in your business and you've reached them at the alignment level, right? But then we look at the scores. Okay, well, sentiment 7, it's a 7 and they like your perspective, right? It's good. Utility, though, is a 4. You gave them data, but you're seeing really a lack of interest in the next step, or it's not actually helping them reallocate their budget. You don't see that them actually taking that next step with your content. Governance might be an 8. Your newsletter is on point. It's solid. Feedback is that it's providing a ton of value, and you're getting the same feedback from your blog. You're getting the same feedback from the sales calls that your people are having with that content at that highest level. It's an 8. Proximity, it's a 5. They haven't replied, but they're spending a lot of time on your site. So here, our total is 24 out of 40. Our lattice work at that level might be a little bit shaky. But now, for the first time ever, well, we have a direction on where we might focus. And in this particular case, we don't need more content. We need more utility. We need to help that CFO do their job. And that's the key. This measurement framework isn't proof of life or proof of ROI of any one piece of content or even one channel. It's a temperature check against the relationships we're trying to build with our content. It provides for a better climate that allows demand to start to develop. And that's where our other marketing and sales come to play, right? Now, the tendency here is to do that, right? To measure our experiences, the website, the email newsletter, et cetera, separately. And we have to resist that urge because this isn't measuring proof that the website is better than email, et cetera. We've got other metrics for that. It may expose that those things are better, but it's not meant to measure that. It measures the temperature of the relationship with the various personas in our brand at any one snapshot in time. In other words, in business, we don't have a LinkedIn relationship and an email relationship with our partner. We have or don't have one relationship. And if you're great at dinner but a jerk over text, your relationship isn't mixed, it's failing. And you might see that in the dimension of governance and consistency that it's failing in that particular way. We need to improve it. That's the insight it's supposed to provide. I think content marketing value can move to systems where we track that connection, not the transaction. I'm talking about the CFO who never signs up for your newsletter, but defends your brand on Reddit and ultimately evangelizes you to the point of referring you to one of their colleagues. If the only thing we're doing is counting how many email addresses we get, we are almost certainly missing that our content may be winning in those rooms we're not watching. The goal here is a relational renaissance, moving away from attention metrics only, like how many people saw this blog, toward more of a diagnostic tool that tells us, hey, is the general audience market thawing or is it freezing? Okay, but you're wondering now, okay, great, that's fine, but what tools do I do this? There's no trust button in the Google Analytics. There's no measurement of the mean score of comments on Reddit and HubSpot, and you are correct. In part 4, I'm going to cover some of the tech, especially with AI now, agentic AI and CRMs, that can start to help us look at some of those more sentiment or intent-based sort of temperatures. That's in the final part. Next week, what we're going to do is we're actually going to build a measurement pyramid to show you how we actually work with those 1 through 10 scores in the actual cells themselves and show where we're actually building in the trellis to turn those loud cues into an approach that makes us, well, the best voice, the one that our audience trusts in the very noisy world. One last thought. Is this going to work? I don't know. It's a learning piece for me as well. I'm working all this out in real time as I go through applying, learning, looking at the new technology and trying to apply this in real time. Some of this may fall apart, but it feels like there's something here. And so, yeah, that kind of feels in line with what this measurement is supposed to help with anyway. So check out the full article in the link. And basically, it's got all the scoring breakdowns, the charts that we talked about here today. In the meantime, it's your story. Let's go measure some trust, and that'll help us to tell it better. And I'll see you next week.